Are you guys live or did it freeze?
Yeah, we just went live. Hello, everybody. My name is Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. We're starting a recording of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. Joining me tonight, of course, to my right, Rob Morse, Self-Defense Gun Stories and Slow Facts blog, and you find his stuff just everywhere. If there's Second Amendment media that can be consumed, Rob Morse probably writes for them. Below me, John Richardson, Only Guns and Money blog, and honestly, if you're not reading his blog, you should. There was a, and we'll be talking about this, I'm sure, on the show. You just dropped a blog post today, John, about Willis Lee and what's going on with the NRA. So
yeah,
we get social media hooked up. I want to remind everybody as we get ready to go here, if you are watching us live and you want to comment, if you're watching us on the Polite Society Podcast Facebook or YouTube page, go ahead and comment there. We'll get those comments. We'll put them on the air. We'll discuss them as we go through the show. If you're watching us anywhere else, you pretty much got to go to those two places if you want to get your comment on the air. Let's see here. Yeah, and Roderick says, let me get this up before we ever start here. Roderick says John has a lot of good NRA info. And Dana, I think, is getting some, let me, that points out I had an error that I got to fix here. Got to go that one. And there we go. Now Roderick's comment is up. And Dana says, just going to listen while I ride my tractor. Okay, I guess that all depends on the size of your tractor, man. I've seen people call their John Deere little lawn boys tractors. And I know some people with some real $250,000 tractors that, yeah. All right, let me close up some stuff so I'm not distracted anymore. Here. So I can see it. There we go. All right, guys, and I got to fix one more thing before we go live. All right.
yeah. The dogs would be upset if you only had a podcat.
Yes. Yeah, they'd be making all kinds of noise again. All right. I think I'm ready to go on my end, guys. Should we hear from Assad?
Absolutely.
Please.
Here we go. 5, 4, 3.
Hey gang, this is Massad Ayub from the Pro Arms Podcast. I'm here to remind you that our podcast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. And I'm going to suggest you do what we do and check out the other podcasts at selfdefenseradio.net.
Treat every firearm as if it's loaded.
Never point a firearm at anything you're not willing to kill or destroy.
Keep your finger off the trigger until you are on target and ready to fire.
Always be sure of your target and what lies beyond it.
Hey, and welcome to the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. We're recording this one on Monday, May the 15th, 2023. I'm Paul Lathrop.
I'm Rob Morse, and on tonight's show we talk about President Trump saying the bump stock ban is okay because it was the NRA's idea.
I'm John Richardson, and we'll talk about a ruling in Virginia that says 18-year-olds can purchase handguns. So climb aboard.
Strap in.
And hang on.
Episode 661 of the Polite Society podcast starts right now. All right, it's Monday evening. It's 6 p.m. in the Central Time Zone, and that means it's time for another episode of the Polite Society Podcast. Limited crew, as you can see tonight, and podcast listeners, you'll have to take my word for it. We have a limited crew tonight, just Rob and John with me tonight. Rob, what's been up with you since the last time we've been on the air, man?
I've been busy. I was on San Diego Gun Owners Radio. I was on Charles Heller's America Armed and Free. That's out of Tucson. I was on Bill Frady's Lock and Load radio show, Central, Northern South Carolina, and I recorded another episode of Self-Defense Gun Stories. I'm dry practicing and live fire practicing almost every day, trying to get ready for a class I'm going to take this weekend. How about you, John?
Well, my interview about the failure of constitutional carry in North Carolina that was with the Assorted Calibers podcast was released today. Otherwise, it's been a fairly quiet week, except for enjoying seeing my granddaughter Olivia and her second grade. All the second grades have put on a concert this past Thursday. That was not so quiet, but it was a lot of fun hearing all the young voices. So, Paul, how about you and Susan? I hope Susan's doing well.
Yeah, she went through surgery on Friday. She's doing very well. I'm surprised she hasn't poked her head in the studio recently, but yeah, she's home for a little while. She had a hernia repair done, and everything's going along about as well as could be expected. Just trying to get life done one day at a time. We on my end, no shooting this week, but there will be coming up for me this weekend as well. We've got Susan and I do something usually about twice a year, once in the spring, once in the fall, called an open range. There she is, called an open range day. And it's where we invite all our friends, and anybody that is new to shooting is welcome to come out. Anybody new to shooting, you don't pay for anything. We'll even pay your range fees. You come out, we'll introduce you to shooting safely. There's everything from 22 handguns, 22 rifles on up to the really fun stuff that is out there. But that's coming up this coming Saturday. And by the way, if you're in the area where you can get to southeast South Dakota within a day's drive, get in touch with me or get in touch with Susan. We'll let you know how to get there and all that good stuff. Been planning that, doing a lot of planning for AmCon. We had a AmCon conference call last week, and just trying to keep the train rolling, man. That's kind of what I've been up to. John, I gotta say, man, the second grade concerts, what they lack in experience, they more than make up for in enthusiasm.
Oh,
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. This could be a very quick show tonight. Before we take off to our first break, I do want to tell everybody about Self-Defense Radio Network. As you can see, our tagline there, all your pro-freedom podcasts in one place. We're there, Self-Defense Gun Stories. Amanda's Eye on the Target Radio is there. Mind for Survival. 15 shows on the network right now. More will be coming. Go check us out at sdrn.us. But right now, we're going to step aside to our first break. When we come back, we've got our news segment, including those two teased stories, and we'll get to that right after we hear from ACLDN.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. If you carry a defensive handgun, you need protection from the aftermath of prosecution. Even if you do everything right, you can be the victim of an overzealous prosecutor or even be falsely accused. That is where the ACLDN comes in. They provide immediate assistance when you need it most. If you find yourself under arrest, they immediately pay bail money and the retainer for your attorney. Additional funds are available for trial and civil proceedings. Beyond the money, they have far and away the best team in the industry, providing you invaluable information and training DVDs that are included with your membership, and who stand ready to work with your lawyer on your defense. People like Masad Ayub, John Farnham, James Fleming, Tom Givens, Emmanuel Capelson, Dennis Tuller, and led by Network President Marty Hayes. Initial membership is only $135 for your first year, and you get 8 incredible training DVDs and other educational material when you join. If you don't have tens of thousands of dollars to defend yourself at your disposal right now, you need to be a member of the ACLDN. Go to armedcitizensnetwork.org and become a member today. And please mention that you heard about them on the Polite Society podcast.
And welcome back. This is the news segment of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. Just a few stories to get to this week, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take our first one. A federal judge strikes down law that requires people to be 21 to buy handguns. This out of the Fourth Circuit. A federal judge in Virginia ruled Wednesday that federal laws that require individuals to be at least 21 years old to purchase handguns from federally licensed firearms dealers are unconstitutional. Quote, because the statutes and regulations in question are not consistent with our nation's history and tradition, they therefore cannot stand. That was U.S. District Judge Robert E. Payne, who was nominated to the bench by President George H.W. Bush. As reported by the Washington Post, Payne repeatedly cited the Supreme Court's decision last year regarding the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin, in which the nation's highest court affirmed gun rights. The story says expanded, but it didn't. Fourth Circuit, again, that's Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, West Virginia is the Fourth Circuit. It goes all the way around D.C., but doesn't get there. Maryland is part of the Fourth Circuit as well. And this, let's face it, this is the 1968 Gun Control Act, is where they lost, 18, 19, and 20-year-olds lost the ability to buy handguns. And this struck down part of that. So, John, you're up in show notes. What do you want to say about this one, man?
Well, I remember a case from Texas about 10 years ago that was challenging this very same thing. It was brought by the NRA on behalf with their primary plaintiff, a young man named James DeCruz. He was their plaintiff. We lost. I don't even think the Fifth Circuit took it on appeal. And what still sticks in my craw about that case was just how vicious the anti-gun folks were. In this case, it was specifically the Brady campaign and Paul Helmke, where they just savaged James DeCruz, who was an honor student, had been a junior ROTC, all around good kid, and they tried to make him out like some street thug, one, because he was Hispanic, and two, because he had gone to a party dressed up as a 1920s gangster with a plastic Tommy gun. And it was just disgusting. And I should say, in follow-up on that story about James DeCruz now, Harvard Law grad, a captain in the U.S. Army Reserve as a JAG officer, and a lawyer. Either he was in the Dallas area, he may be moving back to Florida. So it's a person that you would have, it was the ideal plaintiff until he got savaged. It just disgusted me.
Yeah.
I want to remind people that young adults, they leave home before they're well established, they are disproportionately victims of crime. Disarming them makes them disarmed, disproportionate victims of crime. Concealed carry holders are also extremely law-abiding. That's true even if the gun owners are 18, 19, and 20 years old. We need to take our fantasies about how the world is and look at how it really behaves. Please. We're saving lives by doing that.
Absolutely. And the other thing I wanted to bring, right now, it is legal in all, well, in all 3 states. I'm going to say in about probably 30 states. It is legal for a 18, 19, or 20-year-old to buy a used handgun from a private seller. They just cannot buy them from FFLs. There lies
Right.
your
They can
distinction.
certainly be given. Often they can be given one by a parent or guardian. They can buy long guns in many cases.
Yes.
So let me get this straight. You'll give a shotgun to an 18-year-old, but you're afraid of them having a pistol? We need to talk. Give me a call.
Yes.
I'm going to say in my own case, I had a 22 semi-automatic pistol long before I was 21, but I was over 18, and I had a shotgun before I was 18.
Yep. Rob, you want to take the Stephen Gutkowski story? This is an
Yes.
interesting one.
Stephen is a treasure. Trump defends his bump stock ban, saying it was the NRA's idea. Former President Donald Trump defended his decision to unilaterally ban bump stocks, which he called very important during a CNN town hall this Wednesday night. The Republican presidential primary frontrunner didn't turn back on his support for the ban, which has since been found unconstitutional by at least 2 federal appeals courts. He said he consulted with the NRA before issuing the order to the ATF to find a way to outlaw devices. He said the group, NRA, was supportive of his effort. Quote, as you know, the bump stocks are actually a very unimportant thing. NRA went with them. NRA, I went with them, and they said it doesn't mean anything. Or actually, all they do is teach you how to shoot very inaccurately if you're using a bump stock. So we did that, close quote. That's from The Reload. Give it a look. John, what do you think?
The most dangerous thing about the so-called bump stock ban was that it set the precedent for the ATF to go in and unilaterally, or at the behest of an administration, to redefine, number one, what a frame is, and then number two, even worse, was redefine calling pistols with arm braces, which had been approved, are now short-barreled rifles. Would they have done that without the bump stock ban? I don't think they would have felt that they could have gone that far. But by Trump's actions post-Mandalay Bay, he opened the door for him. And that is not right.
Did the NRA give Trump the go-ahead to do this? I don't know. It's possible. Could this be Trump just trying to get himself straight and try to woo gun owners again? That's certainly possible, too. The issue I have with this whole thing is this. Well, look, to start with, what John said is that it's the nose's tent, or the camel's nose under the tent. It opens the door for the ATF to become a lot more active, and Congress, last time I checked, make laws. This is something way outside of what they're allowed to do. Let me get a comment in here real quick. We talked about this on the Saturday edition of The Bullet, and Spartan 6 commented then. He said, remember what I said about giving a mouse a cookie? He'll want that glass of milk. Yep. Give the ATF a little bit of authority, they're going to want to do a lot more with it. John, you got it. Rob, do you want to take your comment first? You want John to go first? You can see where he's going like I can.
Right. Well, I want to add, John is a sharp student of federal regulation. The U.S. Supreme Court, in an EPA ruling, said federal agencies cannot take actions that are not defined by the laws written by Congress. And I wonder if that should have since constrained, in this case, the ATF, and this ruling by the EPA has taken place since Trump turned on bump stocks. John, do you think that's changed the landscape?
The EPA ruling from the last October session, I don't think has trickled down yet. I mean, we're still seeing stuff coming out and not being. If they were truly going to follow the EPA ruling, they would have pulled back the pistol brace ruling. They would have pulled back the redefinition of frames. I mean,
right.
On the pistol brace, part of it is, I mean, they're saying we're going to open the NFA books and you have until May 31st to register them. Oh, and we're going to waive the tax. Well, not that I care about them opening up the registry, which I don't think is correct. What gives ATF the power to even waive a tax that's been enacted by Congress, if indeed these are short-barreled rifles? Nothing. And we already saw that they have lost on May, and if you don't register a short-barreled rifle, it now becomes a felony. According to, I think it's called the Doctrine of Lenity, unless Congress specifies it as a criminal act, an agency really doesn't have the power to turn around and say what is a civil issue is now a criminal issue by just redefining the regulation. And I'm starting to see it now. I mean, there have been, you can find the TikTok or YouTube of it, but there are ATF agents, somehow they have gotten a list of people who've bought forced reset triggers, and they're going door to door saying, you could save yourself a lot of trouble if just handing this to us now. We're not going to charge you, but if you don't, then we're going to get a warrant, and we're going to come back, and we're going to destroy, well, not destroy your house, we're going to search very seriously your house. Mm-hmm. And that's a nice dog you got there. Be a shame if something happened to it.
Yeah.
That's the impression they're giving.
There was legal news, not directly gun related, but legal news that came out last week. I'm getting this off WashingtonMonthly.com, and neither of these guys know that I'm going to be popping this off. So, but the Supreme Court has agreed to decide a case next term that could afford its right-wing supermajority a long-sought opportunity to narrow the deference that judges owe to administrative agencies. The case at hand, Loper Lightbridge Enterprises versus Raimondo, is a dispute whether a federal agency, the National Marine Fisheries Service, has the legal authority to compel herring fishing companies to fund the monitoring of the Atlantic herring fishery. Mm-hmm. If you don't follow the Four Boxes Diner, you should. He talked about this last week. It never made it onto the bullet. But this is another case that has been agreed to be heard by the Supreme Court of the Supreme Court doing what it did in the West Virginia versus EPA ruling last summer. This potentially could be even stronger. This could even be stronger attachment to what the ATF is doing.
Yeah, under that case, I mean, they're looking at trying to force fishermen to pay upwards of $700-800 a day for the monitor to make sure that they're not overfishing. I saw another one just the other day where the National Fisheries are trying to say, you can't go more than 10 knots per hour in most places in the Gulf of Mexico because somewhere down there there's some of these whales that we don't know about. Your 10 knots during World War II for an old tramp steamer was good speed, but it was, in reality, it's pretty darn slow.
Yeah. There are, if you ever watch the Olympics and you ever watch crew where there's college-age young men that are rowing these rowboats. They've got 4 of them in line with one person going, row, row, row. Those go faster than 10 knots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Back to the whole, I don't want to dump on the NRA on this. Okay. Back much, much further to 1986, where, as I told, and I have to do more research, but it came from a guy who was a lobbyist with the ILA, who said the reason the amendment was put in was that it was a sop to the anti-gunners, and it was always suggested that vote for the bill, we know it's in there, it's going to come out, but we're always going to turn around and get Congress to take it out. Well, that was almost 37 years ago, and we still have this amendment.
Yeah.
And those who had machines back then became very wealthy. Well, their product, your M16 went from, let's say, 1,500 to 15,000 because of that.
Yeah, the how do I put this? The value of any firearm with a fun switch you can purchase has gone through the friggin' roof. It's 20,000 for a Thompson now.
And, more.
Yeah, and honestly, there are a lot of wealthy collectors who don't want to see that Hughes Amendment go away because their $20,000, their $25,000, $30,000 Thompsons are going to be worth $1,500, $1,600 again.
Mm-hmm.
We got one more story. John, you want to talk to us about Vermont?
Yeah. This week, Vermont Governor Phil Scott, a Republican, probably a rhino, signed the bill into law that would prohibit paramilitary training. And the bill reads, a person shall not teach, train, or demonstrate to any other person the use, application, or making of a firearm, explosive, or incendiary device capable of causing injury or death, or techniques capable of causing injury or death to persons if the person knows or reasonably show that the teaching, training, or demonstrating is intended to be used in or in furtherance of a civil disorder, or assemble one or more persons for the purpose of practicing or being taught, trained, or instructed in the use, application, or making of a firearm, explosive, etc., blah, 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 if they know that it's going to be used in the furtherance of a civil disorder. The new law does not apply to, quote, legitimate law enforcement activity or educational institutions where military science is taught. They have a military college in Vermont, Norwich University. It also doesn't apply to self-defense instruction or practice without the intent of causing a civil disorder, firearm instruction that is intended to teach the safe handling and use of firearms and any lawful sports or activities like hunting, target shooting, and firearms collection. Anyone who violates the paramilitary training law faces up to 5 years in prison and a $50,000 fine.
Yeah.
Why is this necessary?
This is why this is necessary. Because the Second Amendment only applies to militias, and they want to make darn sure you don't have a militia.
Because somebody hates the Green Mountain Boys, that's why.
Is Vermont being overrun? You can't have a free and fair election because there are too many militias on the street? I'm not seeing it.
No.
This is somebody's fantasy about somebody believes their own left-wing fantasies. Wow.
Well, I mean, the other thing is, I know they say it doesn't apply to self-defense instruction. But can we really trust, and some anti-gun ideologue will not say that it's militia training, especially if you're trying to do team training, like faster training, like trying to, like working on clearing a shoot house. Oh, you're working together. Oh.
Right. Yeah.
Or you've gone online and you've downloaded some military manual from the Corps of Engineers or the Special Forces that tells you how to make incendiary devices or booby traps.
Yeah.
What is it? Marine Field Manual number, what are they up to now? 4, 5, 6? I don't know. Anyway.
Well, and again, this is where I read this is it's the second front on nobody gets to have firearms under any circumstance.
Unless you're wearing polyester, yeah.
Exactly. And it's the right color polyester at the right time of day.
Coming from Vermont, it's really sad because they were the very first state with constitutional carry. And the independence of, small town Vermont, independent, free-thinking people, you've got to say, what the heck happened to that state?
Yeah.
I do wonder.
Well, I think it's kind of, to me, it would seem the case of if you have a small state, you can overwhelm it with in-migrants from other
it's the vacation homes
states.
The vacation homes from Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Notes are on the DGUs.
Let's go ahead and we're gonna step aside to break, then we're gonna come back. We'll get our we get another one in from Spartan 6 before I do that. Liberal Democrats invaded Vermont and never left. Well, if Vermont is the home of Bernie Sanders, I mean, he keeps getting elected somehow.
Brooklyn was the home of Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
And he invaded Vermont.
Exactly. Brought his minions with him. All right, let's go ahead and go to break. When we come back, we're got our DGU segment, including, we got one that was maybe from Kentucky, but no, it's North Carolina. We'll be back with that right after we hear from the Complete Combatant right after this. This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by The Complete Combatant. The Complete Combatant is designed for a broad base of citizens that range from students that don't own a gun on up to advanced students that train often. The Complete Combatant offers several different courses that build upon each other, from avoidance, using verbal commands, and preparing for contact, lethal versus non-lethal decisions, your 911 call, interacting with the police, to even dealing with the legal system in the aftermath. The Complete Combatant courses are a layered approach for all levels of experience that will walk you through all the many stages of decisions while developing a game plan tailored to your skills and your everyday carry. Please visit www.thecompletecombatant.com and make sure you mention this ad to receive 15% off. Again, that's www.thecompletecombatant.com and mention the ad for 15% off. All right, we are back. This is a defensive gun use segment of the Polite Society podcast powered by the Second Amendment Foundation. These discussions are not legal advice. Some of us are trainers, but this is not formal training, and you need formal training. The defensive gun use segment is intended as information and entertainment only, not as training. As always, the opinions of the hosts are only their own opinions and not those of any sponsors or other affiliations. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take our first one here tonight. This one off of Bryan's Road, Maryland. Maryland has become one of the hotbeds of post-Bruen debate and pushback. The state has complied with the decision in some manner, and the number of concealed carry permits has been rapidly rising. An 8-year veteran of the D.C. Fire Department was assaulting his girlfriend in the early morning hours. She managed to escape their townhouse and ran toward a man out walking his dog at 3:20 a.m. Charles County Sheriff had already dispatched officers for domestic abuse calls. The abuser pursued the battered woman as she ran to passerby for help. Witnesses told the officers the man walked up to the dog walker and threatened him. The man had his permit. The dog walker had his permit to carry and was practicing pants on, gun on. As the firefighter continued to walk aggressively and threaten the man, the dog walker pulled his firearm and shot him. He remained at the scene until officers arrived. He was taken in for questioning and then released. The abuser will abuse his girlfriend no more. He was taken to a local hospital and died from his injuries. Maryland does not have a stand your ground law. It has not been stated whether he would have had to retreat or not. I don't know. Rob, you're in show notes. You've obviously got a thought on this one. I'm kind of torn on it. What do you think, man?
Okay, it's going to be really easy to establish who the aggressor was. I like this story. I mean, it's tragic, but it teaches us a lot. It's a teaching moment. I don't care what the woman did in her home. When she ran out from the home, when she runs into the street, when she crosses the street, she has now established that the other guy is pursuing her. Okay, she no longer needs to take a step back, nor does the guy walking the dog. The other man is closing the distance. The guy with the dog is going, stop, stay away. What I think we can learn from this is shout for help. Help me. I need the police. Call 911, because that will convert the ear witnesses that can hear you and who may have heard this man shouting at his girlfriend, shouting at you, threatening you both. Good. Now we've got a list of ear witnesses on the 911 call transcripts.
Well, and remember, going back to the George Zimmerman case, I was one of the many that listened to almost that entire thing because they played out on live TV daily. I was driving truck at the time, so I listened to it on satellite radio. But when that was one of the several things that helped acquit Zimmerman was ear witnesses, was people who were saying, I heard a high-pitched scream for help. And that was one of the things that helped acquit Zimmerman.
You know, Maryland may not have a stand your ground law, but one of the things I learned from Andrew Bronco when I took his class is even if they don't have a law, look to what the common law precedents might be in their Supreme Court, their Courts of Appeals, where they may have ruled on something very similar. So Maryland in general, Baltimore, Metro DC, highly anti-gun. The rest of Maryland, not so much. But still, you would think if they thought the dog-walking bystander defender was in the wrong, he very well would have been charged fairly quickly, I think.
Right.
And the other thing that I did pick up, and then the more I think about this, the more I'm coming to Rob's point of view here. There were witnesses that saw the man coming towards the dog walker, walking aggressively and confronting the dog walker. The other thing that I like about this is the dog walker stayed at the scene, didn't run away, and cooperated with the police. At least there's a limit to how much you need to cooperate with the police, but yeah, I'm liking this one more and more.
Paul, I thought you were going to mention that you and I have all heard about the domestic abuse issues where the girlfriend gets beat up, calls for help, and then a third party gets entangled when she then says, no, I didn't really want help. That didn't happen in this case. She testified. She gave a statement to the police.
Yes. And the other, without there being, how do I put this? I'm going through a little bit of fog today. I'm sorry, brain isn't operating totally up to speed. But my concern at any time in getting involved with third-party conflicts is: do you know for certain which is the good party, which is the bad party, and maybe is the person that is trying to get you to help, maybe that is the person trying to avoid being arrested by an undercover police officer.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like it worked out the right way this time. So
yeah.
John, let's talk about North Carolina.
Yeah, from Lexington, North Carolina, one of the barbecue capitals of the state. My favorite type of barbecue. Steve Kuntz is the pharmacy manager for Lexington Family Pharmacy. He was working in the afternoon when two masked men came into the pharmacy. He heard one of them yell for everyone to put their hands above their heads. When he looked up, he saw a tall man in a mask pointing a gun at his cashier. One of the pharmacy workers screamed, and the alleged robber fired a shot before a second person darted inside. That shot hit a computer monitor. Another shot also grazed Kuntz, and he produced his own firearm and then shot back at the two robbers. The two men departed the store. Kuntz followed them outside. When they fired at him, he fired back at them. He also got a good look at their car. Police arrived in under a minute and began their investigation. That included clear surveillance video of the suspects. The two suspects were found and arrested in Salisbury, probably 20-30 miles away. The 31-year-old suspect was charged with attempted armed robbery, possession of a firearm by a felon, and assault with a deadly weapon and inflicting serious injury with intent to kill. The 22-year-old was charged with the same attempted robbery and assault charges.
Felon in possession, big shot. I mean, holy cow, if we just make it illegal for felons to have guns, they'll give them up, right?
Yeah.
Right. They're going to, of course, break the law to rob and threaten. But sure, I'm sure they'd obey gun laws, wouldn't they, Paul? Really?
Yeah.
No? Okay.
And I'm sure if the pistol purchase permit would have stopped this, right? No. Yeah. When we think of robberies, kind of robberies like this might only happen in larger areas. Lexington has a population of less than 20,000 people. It's proof that stuff like this can happen anywhere, and that, as in this store, people need to be armed for self-protection. I've read the the police report from the Lexington Police Department, and then they had posted it on Facebook, and the details are pretty much what we have here. But there were comments from the people in Lexington. It's like, thank goodness Mr. Kuntz was armed and could protect the people in the store and his staff. They were all positive.
Yeah.
My daughter teaches in the county. My son-in-law works in the county. So it's a fairly it's a very conservative county where they're not going to put up with this kind of crap.
Yeah, and let's face it, a drugstore is going to be a target. Is going to be a target even above what most people term a stop and rob, a gas station, convenience store, whatever. Because let's be realistic, drugstores have drugs. And what do criminals often go after besides cash? Drugs. So yeah, if you can get high and get some cash at the same time, they're going to go for it.
I think the drugs are much more important to thieves than the cash, because most of these stores don't carry much cash anymore because everybody puts it on their credit card or pays for it with insurance.
Yeah.
But they sure have a lot of drugs that have a lot of street value.
Absolutely.
I think there's an important comment here, and it's interesting. The locals are mentally going, what did you criminals expect? Well, okay, then why wasn't there a safety plan for everybody, including the cashier? Guys, you are a target. Arm your staff. Work out a safety plan. And the other thing I would suggest is don't chase the bad guy outside the store.
Amen.
They're legal
I would
issues.
agree with you on that.
There's also degree of difficulty issues. Because as soon as you walk through that door, now you as a defender can be attacked from any direction. It's a much harder environment than you behind the counter stopping a bad guy who's running away.
Yeah, and one other thing that I'd like to point out, police arrived in under a minute. That's a phenomenal response time. Under
They
a
got
minute.
extremely lucky.
Yeah, but even still, it wasn't fast enough.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. One more,
Murfreesboro?
Rob. Yeah.
Okay. We're headed to Murfreesboro, Tennessee at approximately 8 p.m. Two men, aged 42 and 52, decided to break into a home. They were wearing masks. I think they were also wearing gloves, and they were armed. The two broke down the front door and tased the family dog. They held the teenage son at gunpoint. The homeowner figured out what was happening. I think his big clue was when he hears the dog yelp and his son goes, "Don't shoot." That's kind of a clue. The homeowner then secured his firearm and shot back. The 52-year-old intruder suffered multiple gunshot wounds. He was found at the front door of the home. He was pronounced dead at the scene. His companion was also found with multiple gunshot wounds. He was located at the Salvation Army, a short distance away. He survived his wounds. He was treated by EMS and taken to the hospital. The three residents of the home, father, son, third person we don't know, I don't think they're counting the dog. All of those were unhurt. The dog's expected to recover. The surviving criminal has been charged with aggravated burglary, attempted aggravated robbery, convicted felon, John, this is your favorite, in possession of a firearm, and possession of a firearm during the commission of a violent felony. Yeah, I don't think they're going to charge the homeowner.
Mm-mm.
With this one, good on the guy for if it wasn't Pogo, it was real close. It was within reach. Let's put it that way. He was able to quickly, and I would have loved to have seen one more charge against the surviving bad guy, and that is murder. Right? Yes,
right.
In most jurisdictions, if you're committing a felony and somebody dies in the commission of that felony, doesn't matter if you were the one that caused the death or not, you are charged with murder.
One other charge. felony
Animal
animal cruelty.
cruelty.
Damn right. You tased
No.
my dog.
Who do you think you are? The ATF? So Dad was on the phone in the other room. So good for having the situational awareness to go, this is no longer important anymore. First things first. The other thing I wonder, and all the news reports that I looked for didn't describe this, was Dad smart enough to stay in the other room, use the doorway as cover or concealment, and shoot the bad guys, or did he feel the need to enter the room and become a target? So if you've taken more than your first concealed carry class, you know that these are distance tools. You don't have to go become a target in order to defend your family.
I want to take this one other direction here real quick, guys, and that's this. Are you sure that 5-shot revolver is enough? Because it took multiple hits on multiple people to stop this. So...
And to follow up on what both you and Rob just said, this would be a perfect use of an AR-15 with a 30-round magazine.
Yep.
You could shoot distance accurately, especially if they're holding your son at gunpoint. You could do it from behind cover, and you have more than the 5 rounds in your J-frame revolver.
Right.
I personally, in this situation, I'm really liking the AA-10, you know, and 12 gauge AA-10, and maybe a 15 round magazine for that. I don't think they go much bigger than that, but anyway. And by the way, I do not own an AA-10. I've got to wait for the Supreme Court to get around to taking down the Hughes Amendment to get one. So a couple comments in here real quickly. Get this one up first. This is from Carrie Ann. She says, no soft targets. Carrie Ann cannot wait for you to be able to join us again soon. She also says, be prepared, be your own first responder. Got to get this one in from Robert. The third person was the Holy Ghost. Well, the Father and the Son, so there you go.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously.
And last one from Spartan 6. Dad told the press that he would go to jail if he had to for killing somebody who had a gun pointed at his son.
As would most dads. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go ahead and we're going to take our final break. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about what we've been doing in media, and we'll close the show down. We're going to hear first from JPFO. We'll be right back with our final segment right after this.
It all failed before. Alcohol prohibition brought us organized crime, and no less alcohol. Drug prohibition brought us murderous, no-knock, wrong house raids.
Police! Search warrant!
No, wait! The crack house is next door!
Now gun prohibitionists want laws to lead us down that same path. Don't Americans ever learn? Just ask yourself, isn't government the only beneficiary of police-state policies? Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership. Information available at jpfo.org.
We are back. This is the final segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. Rob, I think, isn't this a personal record for you being out of water the longest? I know you've got some stuff that has gone up on your blog. What do you want to plug, man?
Well, before we do, I was that voice that we just heard promoting JPFO. That's Charles Heller.
Yep.
He runs 3 radio shows at KVOI in Tucson on the weekend. He's also a promotions manager, meaning he does sales work. His radio shows have been on the air for 20 years. He was having an in-store anniversary celebration. He invited me on. I'm glad I got to share that moment with them. Charles, you're a phenomenon. Thank you. And a treasure. I've been writing a lot. Go ahead.
Can I interject real fast? He's also the man for as long as I've been going to Gun Rights Policy Conference, he has been the man that has been in charge of the audio for GRPC. And for a long time before I was doing it, he was making sure it all got recorded into MP3 format. Everybody got one that wanted it, and it got released out on podcast.
Yep.
Yes. Thank you, Charles, for so many things.
Amen. So I interrupted you, Rob. I'm sorry. Go, bud.
I have been writing a lot. Rather than try and read through a laundry list, let's talk about the latest post, which is what would happen if Democrats get the gun bans they asked for. It will cost thousands and thousands and thousands of lives. It's called, Do Gun Control Democrats Want Us Dead? My articles are up at Clash Daily, at OpsLens, and at my blog, slowfacts.wordpress.com. John, I know you've been busy at No Lawyers, Only Guns and Money.
You know, while I have a few posts up, there's only a couple I want to highlight right now. The first was a post regarding my agreement with Democratic presidential candidate Robert Kennedy Jr. Now, I kind of think he's a bit of a flake and kind of out there, but he had something he said the other day that made a lot of sense. He noted that he and his family watched the news to find out what the official narrative would be for the day. He's right. The mainstream media has become the presidential propaganda outlet, or the official propaganda outlet for the current administration and for the Democratic Party. And my second was a somewhat satiric post in response to an old porn star illustrating her ignorance about firearms. She was giving a definition of what was called a weapon of war. Now, I'm going to take the fifth on how I knew she was a porn star, but I will say that post has gotten over 1,000 hits. That and more is at onlygunsonmoney.com.
All right. I'm not going to press you on the topic of how you knew she was a porn star either. But anyway, on my end, it's just, for me, it's just right now the Bullet and Polite Society. I do have fun I get to have fun every Sunday when Amanda's on her show. I get to do video production for her, and I get to be a smart aleck behind the scenes and put up comments. But anyway, and I gotta go over here. Oh, okay. I had to actually go and see who John was referring to in that he wasn't kidding, folks, when he said old porn star. Anyway, let's neither here nor there, and I probably should have waited till after the show to do that. But
I was thinking that, yeah.
I think I'm just going to, from that, I'm going to say that does wrap up another episode of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. So for Amy, Dana, John, Susan, Amanda, Robin, Charlie, Carrie Ann, and Rob.
Until next time,
stay safe.
Be aware.
And we'll see you down the road.
The views and opinions on the show you just heard are those of the host and the guest and are not necessarily the views of any sponsors or other affiliations. But hey, not everyone is as smart as we are.
All right, we are clear of the recording. We're still live on the streams. I want to get a couple comments in here fast before I shut those down. Going back to your comments, Rob, when you were saying what you had done. And by the way, I've got tones going in my ear, which means we just set a record. This is the first time in years we've been out in under an hour. Spartan 6 says, Rob, they may not want us dead, but they definitely want us subjugated.
Thank you, Six.
And Carrie Ann says, protection, education, and the law. Know it. Training is the key to safety, not legislation. Yeah. Well, and
that's so good. If only we had somebody on the show that would say things like that.
I'm telling you. I'm going to say, if you are somebody who is consuming our media, whether it be podcast or you're watching us live, and you are not yet a firearms owner, you're maybe making your way that way, I'm going to say the very first training you need to get is on situational awareness. That'll be the biggest part to keeping you safe out in public. Should you get firearms training? Should you own a firearm? I believe the answer is probably to both of those, yes, especially if you have the ability to debate with yourself whether I should have one or not. I think you probably are responsible enough if you're smart enough to have that debate. But situational awareness will take you a lot farther, a lot faster than any other training will. So, all right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to shut down the feeds. And everybody watching, thank you. And we